Hey there everyone, Chris again from the Old Man Cycling Show with another episode. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of on-hands work and maintenance on my bicycle. But before we get to that, I'd like to take a minute again to do the normal YouTube request and ask you to please subscribe to my channel, and as well as click the little bell icon next to the subscribe so that you can be notified when I put new content up. And if you watch this video and find it enjoyable and informative, please give it a like button. And as always, if you have any comments, just leave them there and I'll get back to you as soon as possible and answer them. What I wanted to talk to you today about was I was doing routine maintenance on my bike that I use on my trainer primarily. This last week I changed a chain on it, and as part of changing the chain, I took the crankset off and cleaned everything up, and I noticed that the bottom bracket was really rough. So today we're going to replace the bottom bracket on my bike that I ride in a trainer. Now the interesting thing about my bottom bracket is you'll see it here, brand new in box, haven't opened yet. It's a Shimano BB-R9100. It's an Italian threaded bottom bracket. For those not familiar with threaded bottom brackets, there's really, there might be more, but there's two main ways the bottom brackets are threaded on. One's an Italian thread, one's called BSA, which is your standard thread. The Italian threaded bottom brackets aren't as popular nowadays. Pinarello for one, and again, I love Pinarello. Pinarello for one still uses Italian threaded bottom brackets, and my bike that I use for my trainer is an Italian steel frame from about 1999, and they have a Italian threaded bottom bracket as well. It's a Giordano steel frame. So the primary difference between the BSA and the Italian is the way that the cups thread in. So a BSA bottom bracket, the drive side, which gets a lot more force than the non-drive side, the thread is opposite. So if you know your left pedal, the left pedal, normally it's right tight. The left pedal is opposite of that. It's left tight. Well, same thing with the bottom bracket shell, except it's on the drive side. The drive side of Italian threaded bottom bracket is right tight. The drive side of the BSA threaded bottom bracket is left tight, so it's opposite. There's other differences as well in terms of size, width, those types of things, but the main one really is the direction that the threads engage. And some people have noticed that there could be a problem with having a bottom bracket that threads on with the Italian style. It's this thing called precision, whereby as your crank's going forward like that, it's causing back force on the bottom bracket shell itself and causing the reverse threads to back out. I've never had that issue. I've been using an Italian threaded bottom bracket since, I don't know, at least 1995. Never had any issue with the threads coming out, but I'll show you how we put this one in, and I'm also going to show you how I determined that the old bottom bracket is bad. It'll be real clear, but hopefully you'll be able to hear it. The one cup really just sounds like it's a coffee bean grinder. It's very loud, very noisy. So with that said, let's get right to it, and hope you enjoy the video. So before we get started, you'll see I have my bike reversed on my work stand. I have the non-drive crank arm out towards me because the first step of doing this is you can see that right here, I'll move the camera a little bit, you can see that there are two bolts. One on this side, it's a 5mm. One on this side, it's a 5mm. And then in addition to that, there's a preload piece here that has to come out. So the idea is we'll take this preload piece out, we'll take these two 5mm bolts out. There's a little nipple in here that locks down into the other arm of the crank as the axle comes through. That'll remove this side of the crank, and then we'll take the drive side of the crank off, and I'll demonstrate the noise that the bottom bracket makes. Now, the tools we need for this job, pretty straightforward, pretty easy. We're going to need this, which there's a plastic piece that's going to go on the bottom bracket itself that'll undo that. This piece here takes the preload off from the tensioner. We'll need our new bottom bracket. I'll unbox that for you in a moment and show you everything that's in there. We'll need a little grease. I like to put a little grease on the axle, as well as I do put grease on the threads of the bottom bracket just because I sweat so much. I like to keep those threads greased so they don't seize up and they don't get corrosion there. That helps. And then I have a little screwdriver. The little screwdriver is going to help me pop up this little pin that's in here that helps hold that down. And then for assembly, important, we have a torque wrench. You really want to make sure that you tighten your cranks when you're doing anything with the bottom bracket or anything with the bike that has a torque specification, especially these finer little pieces. You really want to make sure that they're torqued to the right setting. You know, especially if you have a carbon frame, critical on a carbon frame to really make sure you torque it. But any type of thing, you really want to torque it properly to make sure, number one, that it's properly attached to the frame and the bicycle, and number two, you don't run into any issues as you're riding. So let me get things in position here, and I'll show you the disassembly of the crank arms, and then I'll take the bottom bracket apart and show you just what a bad bottom bracket sounds like. Okay, we're getting started. I opened up the Dura-Ace BB-R9100 bottom bracket box. In it you'll find, this is the drive side. It has the protective tube in there that the axle goes through. You can see there's already some thread lock. The blue stuff is thread lock on the bottom bracket threads, but like I said, I do put a little grease, and people might comment on that and say you should never do that, but I sweat so bad that I don't want it to get seized up in there. I've had it where I've had to take a big pry bar to actually get it loosened up. And then this is the left side. So again, the difference with the Italian thread is, instead of turning this to the right to tighten it, we're actually going to be turning it to the left to tighten it, and you'll see that as we get into it. Included with the bottom bracket is this tool. This tool slips over the bottom bracket. You put this wrench on the tool like so. Now I'll show you how in a second here when I get it on. Like so. And you can do it. And then this is how you're going to tighten the bottom bracket or loosen it. Okay? So first part of this operation here is we are going to remove the left crank arm. Zoom in a little bit there. Very simply, you take this little preload out. It's never very tight. It should be very easy to remove. All you do with this is it's just in there to basically hold the crank arm from wobbling back and forth this way. But you take this out pretty quick. You can usually get it to the point where once you get it loose, you just sort of spin it and it comes right out. Okay. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Watch me unscrew this, isn't it? And like I said, it comes right out, right? Okay, with that done, I gotta find my 5mm. I had it down here somewhere. 1 second. Okay, now we're gonna loosen up these two 5mm here. Again, these were torqued down. It says right on the crank arm here where you should torque it to. I'm not using the torque wrench to remove them, no need. You're just going to loosen them up and move this little piece up here, which you'll see in a minute once these are loose. And by the way, this is another beautiful Italian frame. If you haven't figured it out by now, I like Italian bikes. This is a beautiful Giordana. Okay, so those are loose. Now, like I said, there's a little pin in here that sometimes if you're lucky and you have long fingernails, you can pop up. But I'm never that lucky, so I just take a skinny screwdriver, go on the end of this piece here, push it up so it gets the pin out. The pin's out, and this crank arm should come off. There's a crank, and now you can see when you look down in here, let me make sure it's on camera. When you look down in here, you can see there's a little pin that comes down right there, and that locks into the top of the axle as it comes through on the crank arm. There's a little hole that you'll see right down there, and that's where it locks in. Hopefully you can see that right there. That's where it locks in, just to keep that crank arm, gives it a little bit more security from coming off. Okay, now to get the crank arm the rest of the way out, I'm going to turn the stand around so I have room. You can see right now if I just push that through, it's going to hit the stand. I won't be able to get it out. You don't need to see me take this crank arm off, but basically you're just going to take the entire crank arm off. Before you do that, I remembered I do have a spacer on this side that I need to remove. That's just a spacer that comes with the bottom bracket. I removed that. I'll put that back in. So let me take the other crank arm off, and then I'll show you more about the bottom bracket. So as you can see, gotten the crank arms out. I'll clean this up a little bit. This is the non-drive side. You can see I have a little cadence sensor on there. This is the drive side. It's an Ultegra Holotech crankset. I've already taken the non-drive side. I can talk today. Bottom bracket housing out. I'm working on the drive side. Let me finish this, taking this out, and I'll show you the difference, and you'll hear why I need to replace this bottom bracket momentarily. Again, you know, it's one of those things I wouldn't have caught it unless I was doing my normal maintenance, which you know, I replace the chain every couple thousand miles. So this chain probably had about 5,000 miles on it. It was starting to get noisy on my trainer, so I just figured I'd replace it. The bottom bracket's out now. Listen closely. This is the drive side. Listen. No sound. Spins nicely. No sound to it. As compared to the non-drive side. I don't know if you can hear that. It's faint, but it feels literally like coffee beans getting ground up. I mean, it's rough. It doesn't spin smoothly. And you can actually, it's to the point where it's so bad, I feel it in the pedal strokes on the trainer. So again, just one more time. Quiet. I mean, not quiet. This is the non-drive side, not quiet. And drive side, smooth and quiet. Now, back to the Italian threading itself. I think I might have said it the wrong way when I first was telling you. So this is the drive side. So in a BSA bottom bracket, to tighten the drive side, you're going to turn it to the left. Okay. This is an Italian threaded bottom bracket. We're going to turn it to the right. You can see there's already thread lock on here, but I am going to go put a little bit of grease on there. And like I said, I'll probably get a lot of comments and a lot of, you know, why are you doing that? It's going to come loose. I've never had it come loose. And as I said, I am a profuse sweater. So I put a little bit of lube in here just to prevent any kind of corrosion coming up between these threads and the frame here. Before I do that though, you don't need to watch me do this. I'm going to clean this up, clean the shell up real good before I put this in. And then I'll be putting this in a minute. Okay, so we're going to start reassembling here. I just did put a, again, very minimal amount of grease on the threads here. This plastic piece does come off, but I'm leaving it attached so that when I push it in, the other end cap will slide right onto the top of that. Again, you know, with the Italian threading, it's different than the other ones. You want to make sure it's started in there perfectly straight so you don't cross thread it. You should be able to get it started by just your hand. That's how you make sure it's not cross-threaded. I have cross-threaded the bottom bracket before. I'm just doing this because with the little grease in there it is slippery. You should be able to get it pretty tight by hand before you actually have to go to the tool and tighten it. I have cross-threaded the bottom bracket before. It's not a good thing. I had to get my bottom bracket retapped. Let me just double check this one. It should be fine. And take a look at it, make sure it's going in right. I think that's caused the Loctite on the threads. Just take a look at the threads real quick. Yep, it's going in fine. Okay, so we'll start threading him again. Again, you know, you should be able to turn it by hand to get it started. Once you get it started, then you can take your bottom bracket tool, pop them on there, and just start, you know, winding them in. Now you are supposed to torque your bottom bracket. I know at the beginning I said, you know, you want to make sure you follow all the torque specifications of your bike. In this case, I don't have a torque wrench that'll actually fit onto this. They do make a tool that will do the bottom bracket for you that attaches to a socket wrench, which you could then use a torque wrench for. I think it's supposed to be like 40 foot-pounds of torque for your bottom bracket. But you know, this will basically get snug against the frame and you won't be able to turn it anymore. So I'm not really sure, you know, if I would even be able to get 40 foot-pounds on it. It's pretty much just in when it's in. So just getting it down there now. It's getting a little snug, but again, I believe that's mainly due to the Loctite on the threads. It's almost in, and you'll see when it's in, you know, it's flush with the frame. So I don't know if you've ever heard of them saying, you know, they're gonna face your frame like that's in all the way. So that's basically making sure that the frame's flush. So now you can see that this side's in. Again, this is the Italian threaded bottom bracket. It's righty-tighty, whereas the BSA bottom bracket is on the front, it's left to tighten. So we'll take the new non-drive side, go to the other side and install this. I'm not going to turn the frame around for this, I'll just move over here. And sorry, you actually get to see me now. Same thing, this is going to go righty-tighty, just like the other side. Again, you know, you should be able to turn it by hand to get started. That makes sure it's not cross-threaded. You don't want to cross-thread these things because it gets your bottom bracket retapped. And I know this from experience is a pain. Let me find my bottom bracket tool right here. Okay, we'll put this on. And now we'll just tighten them up. And this really is, you know, I know it's taken a while, that's because I'm talking, I'm not really focused on the task at hand, but this really is a do-it-yourself job, especially a threaded bottom bracket. Press fit bottom brackets is another story. Press fit bottom brackets, there really is no common standard for press fit. So depending on your bike, you know, you may have to get different tools for it. My daughter's bike, which you'll see in an upcoming video, I'm about to change the chain on that, but I'm not going to touch the bottom bracket, is a press fit. I don't do enough with press fits that I would need the tools for it, so I'll just take that to my local shop. It does actually need a new bottom bracket. It's creaking horribly, which is one of the problems with press fit. I personally won't buy a bike with a press fit bottom bracket. I am a big fan of threaded. I think they just, you know, they don't loosen up, they work well. I just like them. All right, so now we're ready. You can see I did put a light layer of grease. Again, I like Bill Wood's waterproof grease. Some of the best grease I find. I just happen to slip the chain over so I don't forget to get that in place and put the crank arm in. Sometimes it takes a little persuasion. So the crank arm's now in. I put the chain up on the smallest ring so I can drive it all the way in. Right. Oops, the chain came off. Put that back on there. Alright, the chain's on. Might need a little tap. Yep, it's not all the way in with my rubber mallet. Alright, that's in. And I know people are probably screeching when they hear that. This is a rubber mallet though, not hitting it hard. And we're going to go put the non-drive side on. And I'm going to turn the frame around for this so you can actually see when I get this all lined up. You can see how I get the pin down in the hole. So I'm going to turn the frame around up and I'll be right back with the camera. Okay, you can probably hear my dog singing to me in the background. So just the opposite of when I took it off. If you remember, I have a little spacer that goes on this side. So I put the spacer in. Spacer's in there. Again, it's very difficult to see. Maybe you can see this little piece sticking out the top. Right there. There's a pin that goes in and out. It's right in here. There's a hole down here. Let me see if I can move the camera. You might be able to see it from this way. There is a hole in the bottom of that axle that comes through that pin locks into. So you'll see when I put this on, okay, this is going to go in, and the way you know it's in far enough is that's on there, and this pin will go up. And see that pin? You can't really see it, but that pin is now in this hole. So that's another thing. Like, I can't pull this crank off now because it's stuck in that hole, right? So that's part of how you know that this crank arm is on properly. It's seated in, but that doesn't really hold it. It's really going to be these bolts if you torque them to the right tension. But now what we're going to do, wipe that off, is we're going to put the preload tension on before we tighten the bolts. This just puts a little preload on it so that the crank arms are tight enough. It's not always a perfect thing. You want to make sure that you can see there's side to side play in this. Maybe you can't see it, but it's moving this way and that way. All this little preload thing does is make that go away. You don't need to snug it down. It's not something that you're going to tighten with brute force. It just needs to snug on there and take that little bit of play out of the crank arm. So a couple turns in here, and we should be all set. And you just want to play on this, see if it's moving. It's still moving a little bit. Just give it a little bit more of a turn. It's really not tight at all. Just a little bit of turn, and that's fine. So that's plenty snug. You can see, the pedals go around. It is nice and quiet. I can feel the difference in the crank arm already. Okay, so now we're going to get to the torque part. So again, it's written right on top of the crank here. Let me see where we are here. It's written right up on top here of the crank as to what you want to torque, what you want to set your torque wrench to. I'm sorry for the picture quality. I know it's not the best in focus. This one says to set it to between, if I can read, 12 to 14 Newton meters. And it's a 5mm. So again, I have my trusty torque wrench. I tighten it up to between 12 and 14. And we're almost at 12. Okay, there's 12. There's between, let's see if you can see that. That's between 12 and 14. So we're at 13. Lucky 13. Take out my 5mm head and start to tighten these a little bit by hand. You want to tighten them evenly. So you want to do a couple turns on this side to tighten it. You want to do a couple turns on this side to tighten it. And then when you start using a torque wrench, you want to torque it down evenly. So I'll do this one. Give me a little turn here, 2 turns. I'll go to this one, give him 2 turns. Okay, I'll go back to this one, and it should probably click on this one. Let's see. Listen for that little click. There it is. All right, so that one's tight. I'll go back to this one. You should click. There he is. Now just to double check, I'll go back to this one. If I can get him in the hole. I don't have my glasses on, so sorry about that. Right, you should click right away. Oops, wasn't in there. You got to be careful with these. You don't want to strip the heads on these things. Okay, he's tight. And lastly, this one. And there you have it. So that's all it takes to replace your bottom bracket. It's nice. It's in there good. Clean up when I'm done here. Get things looking nice. Go on the trainer now for a little bit. But again, this was the problem one. It was actually this one. You can't hear it, but that is really, really, really rough. And it was shot. And if you actually could see in there closely, you can see it's pretty rust colored, pretty gross looking. As I said, I do sweat quite a bit. Crank feels great. It is smooth, noticeable difference with that bottom bracket. So turn on me a little bit. Whoop, back out a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. You found it entertaining. This is maintenance you can do at home. Very easy, very simple with a threaded bottom bracket. You can obviously do press fit bottom brackets at home as well if you have the right tools. I just don't have those tools because I don't have a need for them. Hopefully you found this informative. Again, if you like it, please click on the like button. Please click on the subscribe. It really helps me out. If all the views I had subscribed, I'd be a third of the way towards my first goal of how many subscribers I want. So please click on that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Click on that bell icon so you get notified when I make new videos. And as always, this is Chris. Thanks for watching, and we'll have another show up soon. Thank you.